Welcome to Collab Nut Multiplayer. I'm Honeyshuckleex.
I'm Sackbot Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz.
Today's episode is going to be on Night in the Woods.
Woo!
So, this is about a video game that's called Night in the Woods. We are not, in fact, just doing a surprise episode about a camping trip.
Not yet, at least. What? Wait, second channel. We'll go on a camping trip and we'll put it on the second channel and we'll call it a video game.
Well, this went sideways fast.
No.
So,
You're right, I don't really want to go camping.
So anyway, the video game in question, if you're not familiar, isn't even about camping, so...
No, not at all. But first, we'll get into the details. Night in the Woods is a video game. Came out, I forgot to write down what year it came out. You guys played it in 2019, right?
It would have been... Would it have been?
Well, I know we definitely finished in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. It's developed by Infinite Fall, published by Finji, and it's available on Steam, itch, and some other platforms. In genre girl.
So, lots of people might call this game like a walking sim. It's kind of a term I've come to odds with lately, but that's a conversation for another time. But I think a lot of people would call this kind of cozy conversationalist in that kind of aspect. But there are also some like platforming elements and some choices matter elements. It's definitely majorly a narrative game. It's a story-driven game.
Explore, adventure.
Yeah.
Not so much puzzles.
Oh, I'd note with the cozy thing is, there's genuinely some cozy to it, but do not expect good vibes all the way. You're definitely not gonna get that.
Yeah, this is less Stardew Valley, a little to the left, and more of slow-paced.
So how I described it to a friend is I said it was spooky, mundane, but not horror. It deals with dread at economic decline and disappointing people. It's kind of cozy, kind of creepy, uncomfortable, and super funny.
Yeah, the comedy is a really important aspect of the game. And it tackles some, like, secondhand embarrassment humor that didn't make me want to run away.
Well, that's an accomplishment.
It is. It really is.
So you're gonna feel stuff. If you empathize with our player character, May Borowski, at all, you're gonna feel some stuff. May's going through some things.
It's like, yeah, if you're someone who's gonna be, susceptible, have strong reactions for being, secondhand embarrassed and whatnot by, player character, this game might be hell for you.
Yeah, but if you need some exposure therapy, this might be a good game for that for you also. I'm just gonna put that out there because, there are some that treat that kind of thing with no respect. The fact that, you can feel like, I'm thinking more about movies when I say this, there's secondhand embarrassment where the thing itself is laughing at the character and the audience is expected to laugh at the character too, rather than empathize with them. This one you're definitely supposed to have empathy for May.
Yeah, while also still going like, oh my god, what is she gonna do next?
Oh, yes. Yes.
May Borowski is not the villain in this story. That's very important.
Although sometimes you may wonder.
I've got nightmare eyes!
Yes, self-described nightmare eyes. So, the main setup to the story is just May's showing up kind of out of the blue, home from college, not gonna return, where nobody knows why she's home, and she's dealing with the fact that she kind of feels like a failure.
Yeah, and neither of her parents came to pick her up.
Yeah.
So she has to walk home in the dark, get brought home by her aunt cop. It's like the worst return ever.
So yeah, so it's interesting little setup to the story. And then the main gameplay takes place with May wandering around town while we slowly figure out what this town is and who all these people are. And you gotta take your time with it. It's a slow-paced game on purpose, and if you rush it, you're gonna miss so much. And it's going to be boring. But every little place that you play, there's so many little details. When you're walking down the street, you kick up the leaves. I always thought that was fun. And the soundtrack's a bop.
Yeah, it's like just as like a set dressing thing, the town is full of like little squirrels, and they are so dynamic.
They'll run away from you.
Climb up on things, stash nuts places.
So, let's see. And that's the basics of Night in the Woods. I don't want to get into too much yet because I want to encourage you to play. If you get a chance, please do play. We are going to get into mild spoiler territory and then extreme spoiler territory as we go on with the discussion from here. So you have been warned. And as always, the episode can wait. We hope you do spend time with and enjoy Night in the Woods.
Yeah, that wait could be long. This is a long game.
It is. It's a lot longer than you might think it's going to be.
Our production notes, our production schedule makes us laugh now because we're like, okay, we'll just play through Night in the Woods, get that done, and then work on the Slay the Princess episode. If you look through our back catalog, you can probably guess what happened.
It took longer to play than we thought it was going to, even though I had just played it. So anyway, give yourself some time and patience to really play it. Getting into it and giving it the time it's due would pay off. Absolutely. So, as far as you were talking about mechanics there, one of the interesting things that the game does mechanically is it kind of gives you the choice of whether you want to navigate via walking simulator tactics or platformer tactics. You can't just walk around to most places and get where you're going, but you also have a whole other world available to you as May jumps on everything and walks on the power lines and peers in people's windows and is genuinely kind of a pain in the butt.
I guess you typically expect from the side-scrolling setup the game has. It's like, space really opens up to you if you engage with it vertically.
Walking on the power lines.
But you are given the opportunity to play the game and miss a whole lot of stuff. A lot of stuff is optional to progression, to the plot.
You know, there's tons of in-depth little moments you can bump into that you don't have to.
Well, just in the difference between the Let's Play that Shuckle watched, Shuckle and Sackbot's playthrough, my personal solo playthrough, and our together playthrough, we still are pretty sure we didn't see everything.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think I've seen the alternative to the knife fight ever.
I wonder if there is an alternative to the knife fight. Or
well, I mean, going on Bee's Path? No, I've never seen that ever. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there's only knife fight.
Which brings us into one of the other things I wanted to talk about with that, which is the concept of mischief. While this game completely explores mischief. In fact, May's best friend, Greg, says, what do you want to do tonight? And he's like, crimes! Let's do crimes! Exclamation points.
Crimes! Crimes!
Yes. These characters are something else, I can tell you. The Team Angus forever!
Yeah, we appreciate Angus in this household.
Yeah, like, the mischief is kind of exactly the embodiment of the meme that goes around of be gay, do crimes. Like, be a little bit of a queer rebel. Do stuff you're technically not supposed to. Some of it's crimes, some of it's just being weird.
Yeah, but while you're playing May, you have the opportunity to do things like explore abandoned buildings, sit with a kid and get things run over by a train, loot abandoned buildings, steal a battery out of a car,
jump off a bridge,
shoplift, hijack fountain controls in the mall. Oh, there's 2 shoplifting instances. There's lots of little things, aside from, Mom being on your case. It's like, don't walk on the power lines, that's illegal. You can go to jail now, you're an adult. And
never mind Aunt Mall Cop, quote unquote, does when she catches you is go, May, get down.
Pretty much. So for some reason, all of these characters in this game are anthropomorphized animals. We're not going to ask questions about what that means or how that works, but it is a little weird when there are the people animals, and then there are animals also.
And then, like, all the food chains are also named after animals, pretty much, or big shopping chains. Like, you got the food donkey, you got the snack falcon, you got the ham panther,
Yeah. You got the donut wolf!
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
I know what it is from, like, a design aspect. When you make your characters anthropomorphic, you have a lot more freedom of design, and also there's an inherent cuteness factor, and both of these things are used very well.
Oh yeah, May needs that, for sure. Those big eyes, you're like, oh jeez. How are you gonna stay mad at little nightmare eyes?
It's a great way to encompass the baby face syndrome she lives with on a day-to-day basis.
Because one of the design choices they also made with these character designs is the 2 of the 4 main gang. The 2 small ones are also the 2 most childlike. Also the 2 most prone to impulse problems and getting into mischief. Not that they're all immune to mischief. They all indulge in it to a small extent. But May and Greg are actually somewhat invested in it, while the other 2 are like, yeah, I don't want to let go of my childhood completely, but I got grown-up shit to do. But then May is incredibly smaller than everybody else. She's smaller than the teens she goes to talk to most of the time. So it's an interesting design choice that she actually physically is smaller, too.
Yeah, there's like one scene where somebody's going like, oh, when I was your... And May cuts them off and says, I'm 20. When I was your height.
Yeah. So you're playing along and going, okay, Night in the Woods, it sounds creepy. When's the creepy gonna start? I mean, people act like, yeah, there's strange things happening. Like, not that I've seen. Everybody's just really normal and boring and...
Except for that one time where we found an arm outside the
outside the diner,
outside the diner.
Yeah, everything's going normal until after band practice when you find a severed arm on the ground that you poke with a stick. If you're fast enough.
Yeah, sets up this whole scene where you find a separate arm on the ground and May's gonna poke it with a stick, but the first time I played that, I got just so, weirded out and nervous about it that, Aunt Mall Cop showed up before I was ready to actually poke it.
Yeah, so you just kind of stood there, kind of poking the ground next to the arm.
Meanwhile, it's kind of a shock point right there to let you know that May's kind of in a different kind of reality than you think right away. It's like, who else that you've ever met, when they'd see a severed arm on the ground, says, ooh, let's get a stick and poke it and make sure it's real. You know, I mean, it's like, that's not the first thing I'd think of if I thought I found a severed arm on the ground. Then again, this is video game, they're cartoon, kind of cutout shape art, and there is no smell.
And there is no cell reception.
Well, yes. Which is a completely different avenue, but yeah.
It's like if it was better for phones in Possum Springs, do you think somebody would have taken a selfie with the damn thing?
Well, that's one way to get banned off Instagram.
If they catch you. No, anyway. Something creepy like that. You're finding there's a lot of horror fans and kind of weirdos in Possum Springs. There's a kid that goes by Germ Warfare, and then there's another one who wants to make horror movies. Then there's the local poet who has a very rich imagination. But one other thing that the game does is it kind of acts as a friendship simulator.
Yeah, as we've talked about your friends, right? Like you play as May, and then there's your friends from school growing up. You had Greg and you had B, and then you also have Greg's boyfriend, Angus.
And they're all in a band together.
They're all in a band together, and as the days go by, you can choose to spend time with Greg, or you can choose to spend time with B. And, each day has a different scenario for each of them, so you gotta pick and choose who you want to spend time with. And, different things will open up in, conversation, or, there'll be dramatic reveals in character as you keep playing. So you gotta choose carefully. Who do you want to spend time with? But, I've played some games with, dating aspects before. And there's, sometimes in those kind of games, it gets to the point where it's just, not even acting as yourself. It's just acting how you think the other person would find attractive.
That's gross.
Yeah. It's kind of like the which button is the win button.
Yay.
Yeah. And this is not that. Even removed from, the idea of dating, right? If you spend time with the person, you don't really fail. Even if you don't spend time with them, you don't fail. It's just, you have different priorities. You have a different level of closeness to people, and that's fine. That's your choice.
Yeah, there'll be scenes you don't get to see as the player because you have to pick and choose. You don't have enough time to be best friends with both. You have to pick one, basically. And then you'll either get to do things like have a knife fight with Greg, which I was like, say what? I have to stab my friend in the knuckles with who wrote this thing? I mean, I grew up in the country. My brother and his friends got into bottle rocket fights like you do in a barn, which, knowing what I know now is one of the stupidest things you could do because you'll set everything on fire. But, kids are dumb. Never did I know anybody who would stab each other with knives, but, maybe that was just my neighborhood. So, that one was like, okie dokie. This is not my wheelhouse. I didn't know how to respond to that. I mean, they introduce it, and all of a sudden you're doing it. You're playing May, stabbing Greg with a knife while Greg tries to stab you with a knife, and it's like, okay.
And it's like, yeah, they're friends the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in another weird way, it's almost like... It's kind of like also at the same time Greg kind of asking for connection and help as he's, struggling in his situation. Because, the heartfelt conversation that comes after where he's just like, yeah, it doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel like it used to.
Which is good. That's the kind of thing that it's okay to leave behind in your life. Just not stabbing each other with knives anymore for fun. Yeah, as a mom, I'm all for people outgrowing that. I would much prefer you, poke each other with toothpicks. You'd still get the impact thing going on, but so many less actual wounds. I know, that sounds really awful. No fun at all. Compared to, knife fight, at least that's cool. But...
Yeah, I think personally I might switch to, spoon fighting or something.
Oh, yeah.
I suppose you gotta be careful who you suggest spoon fighting with.
I'm gonna snort now. So you appreciated the fact that you're not in this story to make May fall in love and have her happily ever after.
I mean, we can still have stories like that, but it's not like you have to be somebody you're not. May is always being herself for better or for worse or for much worse.
Yes. And as we said, along with the having to make choices about who you spend your daily big event with, you are given all the rest of your day to do whatever you want to. And the more you take your time and explore places and talk to people, the more little side adventures you're going to have. You're rewarded for your time of exploration, not just of places, but of people.
Yeah, you get to meet Rabies the possum.
Yes, Rabies is so cool.
Yeah.
Rabies is an acrobat.
Who eats candy. And you get to learn more about sinkholes with your mom.
Yeah, it's just these little adventures open up to you kind of all at once, honestly. Now, before we get into a little bit deeper stuff, so there's something going on in Possum Springs that, of course, we're going to spoil in just a little bit here. But until it gets spoiled for, you as a player, you're kind of wondering, something's going on with May. And we get to witness it through what she says, and then she starts having nightmares. And the nightmares are these shadowy platform areas where you're trying to find 4 musicians. And the legend behind this, the lore behind this is never completely explained. You have no idea who these musicians are. Are they ghosts? Are they just kind of entities? What's going on? Meanwhile, May is getting more and more exhausted in her life while she has these nightmares. And her life already seemed like it was a mess, is completely falling apart as this happens to her. She's got something going on, and the game is holding space the whole time for it to be, quote-unquote, all in her head.
Yeah, things start to escalate when, you watch the kid gets kidnapped.
Yeah, that would make my nightmares worse, too.
So yeah, you're at Harfest, which is their harvest festival, which is their
Halloween.
Yeah, and towards the end of the night, after you get roped into participating in the Founders Day play and and throwing water balloons at the town council,
which is something they signed up for. This isn't you being a prankster. This is something they thought was a good idea.
To get doused in cold water in the middle of autumn.
Right, which they regret for the rest of the game and make fun of each other for setting up, which I think is a kind of wonderful little detail where the story is still going on for everyone in town as things go on, and the little things that happen while you're there matter, although it doesn't feel like choices matter so much, but time progresses the same for everyone. And then, yeah, she's having nightmares, she doesn't know if it's all true, and then she has a dream about a big creature that actually talks to her. And we in the family refer to it as not God. I didn't look on the wiki to ask what anybody else calls it.
Well, yeah, and the reason why we call it not God is because May asks if it is God, and it gets very offended.
It's like...
Again, more people coming to me and asking if I am God when I am not God. But I can show you things before I leave.
Yeah.
Because I am tired of tiny things.
So this story, the not God tells you, is that something else is here, and it flailed and kicked a hole in the sky, and now creatures like May keep coming through it, implying that they're entering some other dimension and dream, or whatever.
Also, look at these weird, creepy bugs.
Well, it says, you've gotten deep enough to see me. If you go any deeper, this is what you're going to encounter. And then it shows her these eldritch... They look like nebula, space freaking creatures, and they're blind, but they can still see you, and they'll eat you without thinking about it. They're not going to care about you. They will barely perceive you. So I'm going to shut the hole in the sky, and I don't remember if they ask her if she has any questions or whatever, but...
I think they do, and then, she can ask stuff, and it can go, that's a stupid question.
Well, she asks not God if anything has any meaning. And
well, I mean, that's one of the things. I think that's what we asked. You have another option.
That's true. But anyway, that is a ridiculous question to ask an entity that you don't even understand any of their reality. How are they supposed to translate meaning into yours? So I'm not even going to answer that. When you wake up, you're never coming back. Goodbye. And you're like, wait, what? Okay, there's nightmares. Sure, I'm in a video game. My character's having a nightmare. Cool. The nightmare's talking to me. And it says it's going to stop my nightmares. And for me, that was devastating. Because the nightmare parts were my favorite parts. I was really enjoying that platforming and all that stuff. And then now I hear the wake up sound. And then she goes and tries to tell her friends about the ghost. She thinks it's a ghost that kidnapped a kid, but there's no one knows of anybody missing, and her friends don't believe in ghosts, but they indulge her. And they help her do some research into what on earth might be happening.
Because it's like, yeah, I think you did see a kid get kidnapped. I don't know if it was a ghost, but we'll lean into this theory.
And she believes it's a ghost because when she re-examined what happened later on, whoever she saw seems to have run directly through a fence. Not over it, but through it. How they got the kid through it. That's the amazing thing.
It happens off screen, so maybe they chucked the kid up in the air, face through the fence, and then caught them on the other side.
Or maybe,
that would have been a move.
Or maybe they're actually a wizard and they took the spell Misty Step and...
There's something weird going on, and there doesn't seem to be any other magic in this place. It seems to be a lot like our physical reality. Aside from no fall damage from jumping from high places.
Well, that's because May's a cat.
I'm very well aware that that's probably the reason that she's the only one that does the things that she does. Yes.
Sackbot?
I was just thinking about, the ghost question mark. It's when you see him standing on the other side of the fence, it's you can see stars through him.
Oh, yeah. He's got some misty quality, but also you're not sure whether or not he's real or whether or not he's a figment of May's imagination. I mean, real to other people. Definitely, that is what May saw. For sure. And, since it's a game, we can't be guaranteed as players as to whether or not we're seeing this because May's seeing this, or whether we would see it or not if we were there also.
Yeah, it's I feel inclined to say something about an unreliable narrator, but it's more about, what is this narrator here speaking to?
What do you mean?
It's I guess it's just a matter of how literally should we take what we've been seeing here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the questions that the game appears to be contemplating. It's where does that line go, and how much can we indulge each other in our weirdness, which is one of the most uplifting things that the game talks about. The 4 band members really are each going through it in their own ways, and are, despite how annoying May can be, and how much trouble May is, and let's not mince words, May is a pain in the ass.
You are a horrible person. That's what it says. A horrible person.
And they weren't going to say that to her, because they don't believe it either. But it's I don't believe in ghosts, but you are obviously going through something. So let's explore this together and see what comes to light.
Yeah, it's as, Angus said, it's I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in you.
Which you're yes, Angus. But anyway, So then as time goes on, I won't get into all the things that they find out, but, you know, of course I'm gangbusters on the Union things, which is a funny way to put that. I don't think I should. But, you know, I really like all the Union history of the town. And May's like, no, I need to go off and look for the ghost. And she's just following this pole in her brain out into the woods. And they're like, okay, well, you're not going alone. Where are we? Look up. Surprise! Murder cult!
And they foreshadow this very heavily at the very beginning of the game, and then just abruptly stop, and then it's like, psych, it is the murder cult, you know? Like,
it really is a murder cult. And so apparently, Not God was alluding to another possible creature from their dimension, maybe? This is all maybe. It's never defined completely by the game at all. It leaves room for lots of interpretation, lots of your own ideas, and your own headcanon bleed through, right? Which is good. I like that kind of thing. I mean, I like a fully fleshed out lore too, but I also like the room to play. And you get there and the Not God had talked about a creature in the hole in the center of everything. Well, it turns out that May was not the only one aware of this. Someone else had been called in the past, and they found the creature in the hole in the center of everything. It's just this big hole.
In the middle of a mine.
In the middle of a mine. The old mine that they'd closed up, which they might have closed up because this thing was in there. Who knows? And either it convinced them, or we don't know. We never actually hear it talk, I don't think.
Yeah, how they tell the story is that two people went down there for copper. One of them fell into the hole, and the other one was like, oh shit, that's bottomless.
Yeah, but then things started to get better. So they started throwing more people in the hole, with this idea that economic prosperity would come to Possum Springs if there's enough human sacrifice to the hole in the center of everything.
Yeah, so let's put all the other murderers in there. Anybody who looks like they aren't going to get a stable job.
Other murderers?
If there was any, probably they would have gone like, nope, we don't want anybody who anybody would miss. So, like, if you do something like that, like, sure, we'll throw you in the pit.
So yeah, if they suspect you're gonna deal drugs, not even if you do, they suspect you're going to, and vagrants and those kind of things. So anyway, it turns out that one of their more recent victims was a high school friend of these kids, specifically of Greg, and may have been asking about him, Casey, the kid who disappeared, who the murder cult admits that they murdered all the time. She'd been asking about, when she meets people who have been on the railroad, traveling on the railroad, like, have you heard or seen my friend Casey? And they're like, no, but I'll ask around and see if anybody has, is what they say, And turns out, no, Casey was kidnapped and murdered by the murder cult. And when they tell the story of what kind of the thing is the whole story of Possum Springs now is the main grocery store had to close, something else had to close, they just lost their pizza place.
I believe multiple derelict factories in town.
And a couple empty buildings downtown. There's no growth here, and the cult people are talking about the kids don't stay and everybody's leaving. And then you think back to the founding play, if you participated in that in Harfest, and it's like the story of the town's founding is that there was poisoned water here because the spring had bled through a copper deposit and it made the water poison to drink. So you talk about that, the place is prone to sinkholes, is subject to floods. This is not actually a very sound or safe place to live, and the things that they're talking about that they got from these sacrifices are just fewer of the bad things. They can't point to any actual good things. There have been no new factories. There have been no new jobs. The kids are still leaving, yet they still are firm believers that what they've been doing this whole time is working. And so they're doubling down and trying to convince these kids who've discovered them that it's going to be their legacy to continue to do this to save Possum Springs.
We need the next generation, and you are worthy because you found us. You can't tell anybody. We know who you are, so you're going to comply, or, we've just told you what happens to people don't, so...
Yeah, when you find them in the woods initially, they are preparing to do something awful to one of their own. So...
You left an arm outside the diner!
We're gonna get caught. Meanwhile, correctly they guess that May has been drawn there. And it's true. Why else would she be out in the mine, the abandoned mine in the middle of the night? it just really, even as mischievous as she is, this is out of character. I mean, the mine's not covered in graffiti or anything like every other place people take you. So it's not a place people normally go. So you go once, and then they leave, and then everyone's kind of haunted by cult members after that. All the band members are being followed. And May gets shot at and passes out, gets really sick. And the story kind of goes really fast from there, and they end up trapping the murder cult in the abandoned mine and leaving them to die.
So, it's like, you bought them in the woods, about to find out they exist, stuff goes wrong, May ends up feeling real bad, then eventually just, has to go in there and confront whatever it is. So then you figure out what the murder cult's up to, you see the hole, and then on the way out, you just kind of end up leaving them down there to die.
I mean, what can you do to save them at that point? With a broken elevator, you have to explain why you were down there. You have to grapple with the idea that if you do save these people, they're probably going to kill more people. There's a lot to unpack here.
Meanwhile, they didn't start any of it. They were pulled into it and trapped just the same as anybody. It's like they're really exploring these kind of morally gray things. And they grapple with it a bit, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be consumed by guilt either.
It's probably going to keep them up at night sometimes, but that's more empathy than those cult members have felt for anybody they killed, so,
It's kind of apples and oranges. You don't really want to judge yourself by the morals of serial killers now, do you? Mm-hmm. You want to be better than them. And
that's what I mean. Hey, I'm being kept up at night. I'm glad I'm the one who survived.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been watching some other shows too where they make this same fallacy. If sacrifice is necessary, you make the sacrifice yourself. You don't sacrifice others. If your heart is pure, or whatever. Yeah, you tell me you've got a pure heart while you're committing human sacrifice of others. No, sorry, you got to turn that card in. You don't get to carry it anymore. So we never really find out what happens to them, but it's heavily implied that they suffocate to death.
You cut off the main exit/entrance you take to get there initially, and you end up getting the other one blown up with dynamite.
Off screen. You don't get to participate in that particular shenanigan, May. But it's just, the story seems so mundane. There's, it's just a small town where, normal things happen, and the economy's going to crap, and there's no new jobs, and we all need to get out of here, and, I'm afraid my mom's grave is going to fall into a sinkhole, or that it's going to get flooded and she's going to float away. That kind of, it's like, it's understandable why this place would feel cursed. And it's kind of ridiculous to want to settle there. It's not a good place to settle.
But people stay because they have families. People leave when they grow up because they don't want to live here like their parents were trapped to doing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where if the kids thrive someplace else, the parents will probably follow. That does happen. That's best case scenario stuff. It's not common. And it's not within the scope of the game. The other mystery that they kind of leave unsolved is the mystery of Bruce. The pastor at the church encourages you to get to know unhoused guy camping in the woods behind the church. And you guys have just normal conversations. And you get to witness the town council talk to him, talk to the pastor about him, while she argues for him just being able to stay and just leave him. Actually, she advocates for housing more people like him at the church.
It's like, we only use this room once a week.
And there's more rooms in this big thing that we don't use.
And the town council's like, but.
Encouraging vagrants to stay here.
I thought you wanted to encourage people to stay here. It's just...
Yeah, I know. But they gotta be the right people.
We can't just go around having a church full of poor people.
You're getting...
What would the fire-breathing saint say?
Fire!
Who knows?
But yeah, the mystery of Bruce is just like, one day you come out to see him and he's like...
Don't tell Pastor K, but I'm leaving. Before she has to kick me out, I'm going. And he tells you this, he spins this whole yarn, that's obviously a yarn about how he's gonna go visit his kids, and maybe he'll be welcome to stay with his daughter, and whatever.
He's gonna hop on a train and go home.
Yeah. Which, if he wasn't talking about that before, it rings hollow. It doesn't sound like the truth. And it leaves an edge of ominous around it. And you don't ever know what happened to Bruce. He just disappears after that. And if you got a chance to talk to him before he goes, you tell Pastor Case, like, yeah, he said he was going to go do this thing, and May gets real excited about how he was going to go home, and Pastor Case like, oh, okay. She doesn't buy it either. She believes that Bruce has lied to her, for sure. Now, the narrative doesn't say what happened to him. There's lots of possibilities of what could have happened to him.
Like, yeah, there's the full possibility that he tried to leave before the murder cult got him, but still got. There's room for that. There's room for lots of things.
But since it doesn't sound like they take that many people.
Yeah.
Like maybe one a year. So I think they already got their kid from another town. So I don't think they needed to take Bruce. So
Who knows? Who knows though?
Okay, so my vote, in my head canon, what happened to Bruce is Bruce did hop a train and left. We don't know where he went. But I know he didn't go home. I don't think he went home to his kids. He tried to find another town to squat in and do. But it also is implied that he could have ended his own life.
The place he's going to was simply not in our world anymore.
Like, one of those things that I think happens when you talk to Bruce is he talks about he doesn't know where his kid is, maybe, or he just doesn't want to talk about his kids, which implies that by going to the kids might be death is one of those, like, leading parts to this theory.
Sure.
Is, like, which, heavy shit, you know.
Right. But I put my hope in the fact that they didn't leave it resolved in a story that doesn't pull punches in a lot of other ways.
Yeah,
so
they definitely, there is some, explored elements of fright-hopping culture in the game in general, so it's not unprecedented for him to have just generally taken the train somewhere.
Well, doesn't he say that's how he got there?
I don't remember.
But anyway, so I'm just saying, there's open-ended stuff hanging out in this game, and there's a lot of time to talk about social consciousness and keeping up appearances. And what does community look like? And what does collective culture mean? And, it's like the cultists believe that certain things are necessary to keep the community together. And luckily, none of them are on the town council because you see them all later. None of them were locked in that mine. But before that happens, you wonder if most of the town council's in the murder cult. At least I did. And it's just a relief in the epilogue to see them all arguing about how they're going to deal with the road during the storm that's coming.
And this is also a part of the conversation where it's like, it was your idea for the water balloons. Are we going to do that this winter too?
I'm not listening to you anymore. Your terrible ideas. But yeah, I mean, there is so much comedy built into all kinds of little places and so much absurdity. And it's just a joy. It's creepy, but it's not scary, and it's really deep, and it's, I don't know, it gives you an opportunity to sit with the discomfort about how hopeless so much feels right now. You'd think that maybe something addressing economic decline and decay the way this does would feel too overwhelmingly too real, too close to home to want to engage in, but it doesn't give that feel at all, probably because May's such a pill.
They make jokes about this, like, in-game, too, where, like, if you go to the graveyard with B, and May's just like, come on, say something scary! And B's just like, taxes. May's like, no, that's the boring kind of scary!
Yeah, but it's the scariest kind of scary. And it's the one that she has to deal with most intimately all the time, picking up the slack after her mom died, so anyway, Night in the Woods deals with existential dread, even, and the line between where does crazy begin? Where is what you're experiencing a mental health thing or a religious, spiritual, supernatural thing? It's like, and it grapples with all that and doesn't really decide for you where any of it is. So there's a lot going on here. It's totally worth your time. I suggest everybody give it a playthrough. But you're gonna have to set aside some time for that. Oh, and it's currently on sale on Steam until November 1st.
Yeah, I guarantee you if you buy it right now, there is a chance you can finish it before Halloween, but I would not push it.
Not unless you want to devote an entire weekend to it. But hopefully you have better things to do.
Go celebrate your own Harfest.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a lovely day. I am Giggleclutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I'm Sackbot Barbecue.
And this has been Collab Not Multiplayer. Goodbye!
Bye!